welcome back to my channel, Quest for Faith with Brian. And today I got a special guest, Jake, who's a seminarian who volunteered, or I don't know how it works. We're going to go into all of that. Was at our parish this whole summer, and he did a few really cool talks about his favorite courses he's taken so far as a seminarian. And I thought it'd be really cool to get him on because I think, man, we need more priests. We need more people looking into that. And so, Jake, thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it. I know I'm taking up the last bit of a few hours to get to spend with your family before you have to go back to school. So I really do appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for the idea and for just inviting me.
Awesome. So I wanted to kind of just start off really easy. Like, what was your upbringing? Like, did you grow up Catholic? You know, we can kind of start there because I think discernment's always that story, right? So
sure. Yeah, so I was born in Charleston. I'm 21 years old now, so I was born in 2002. My parents are from Mississippi and Ohio, and they moved here before I was born. I grew up here. We were all Catholic. My parents sent me to local Catholic school. I went to Blessed Sacrament Catholic school 1st through 8th grade, and then I went to a Catholic high school 1st through 12th grade. So I was always kind of there. We went to mass growing up and everything. I have older brother and younger sister, so all fully Catholic. My dad didn't finish his sacraments until 2 years ago, so he was baptized. Yeah, he was baptized when he was 9, and received confirmation, First Communion, 2 years ago in 2021.
Awesome. Cool. So that's kind of so just a side note, I have a friend that I'm kind of a mentor at work, and he's your age or a little bit older. I think he's like 24. But he's about to get married, and his wife is not Catholic. And so they're talking about that, like, raising your kids. And he was talking to me about this. Like, no, she's agreed that we can raise them Catholic, and I'm at least going to get him through First Communion. And I was like, don't stop there. Get through confirmation. And he's like, why that? I'm like, well, if you get through confirmation, then it's just confession and you're back in. If they decide, they get through their crazy years, where if you don't do confirmation, then you got to go back through RCIA and go through all that, and then do confirmation and all that. So, I was having that conversation with him because, he's like, I didn't know that. I'm like, come on, dude, you're the cradle Catholic here, because he's a cradle Catholic too. So, I'm like, how the convert know this and not you?
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So you went all the way through Catholic schools growing up. Were they pretty decent Catholic schools? Because you always hear those horror stories, and I always kind of laugh when you hear somebody online say, I went to Catholic school, and then the next thing they're going to say is completely heretical. But how were your schools growing up?
Yeah, I think I was definitely blessed. So the elementary middle school I went to, it's pretty small. So I think the biggest we had was about 50 in 3rd grade. And by the time I graduated 8th grade, we had 21. So there's a little bit of a dip when you get into middle school. But it was good. I remember I had some pretty solid religion teachers that, taught me really the truths of the faith as they are. Didn't hide anything from that end. And so I was definitely blessed to have that. Definitely learned a lot about the guidelines of the church, learned how to read the Bible really well from that young age. And then at Bishop England, my high school, it was a little bit harder for me. I think being in high school, I was definitely more worried about kind of what other people would think of me and everything. And only about 2/3 of the school is Catholic there, because the academics and the sports is definitely a big focus. A lot of people will go there for that. So I think with the culture there, I was definitely a lot more kind of afraid and nervous about it. And so in high school, there were several years where I always thought I was Catholic, but there was a period of about 2-3 years from freshman year to junior year where it was really a hidden thing for me. Sometimes kind of a double life. Sometimes I'd go to youth group, but very much wasn't really living that outside. But I mean, I can't complain. I have a couple theology teachers from there that I still talk to with today as well.
Yeah, I think
Mhm.
that's totally normal. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to wear your faith on your sleeve when you're in high school. Like there's
Yeah.
a guy that I was just on his channel. He's 16, and this dude's on fire. Like he got kicked out of his class because he was reading his Bible in class. And I was like, and it was like, and I'm
Hmm.
going, dude, that's amazing. Cause I I was pretty out about my faith and I'd be fine to talk with it, but I was
Hmm.
definitely not um that I don't know. Like I'd go to we had Young Life when I was in high
Hmm.
school, and I'd do that, and I was going to church. I think what we would go 3 times a week, so it'd be Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night.
Okay.
Typical Protestant uh,
Yeah.
um,
Hmm.
thing. But even then, like I think in high school, it's kind of hard to find your feet, and then you
Yeah.
are trying to fit in with everyone else and yeah, so okay, so that's pretty interesting. So
Yeah.
when did the idea of starting to join the seminary kind of start tinkering into your thought process? That's something you might be
Yeah.
interested in.
So I would say it started becoming a real thing senior year.
Okay.
So when I was about 18, the first time I thought about it, I would say going back to when I was 6, when I started
Okay.
first grades at Catholic school. I remember seeing the priest up there and just being really blown away and being really attracted to it. So that was kind of a blessing that I think that the Lord put in my heart from pretty early on. And so it was kind of there in the back of my mind for a long time. You always have those church ladies that come up to you and they ask you about it, or certain priests that'll
Hmm.
ask you about it and everything. But I always said, well, we'll see. I don't know about that. And in high school, I had a couple girlfriends at different times, and
Yeah.
so it was definitely not then. I definitely wasn't really thinking about it. And then senior year, I was just kind of single for a while, and I decided that was the best thing to just get closer with God, stay single for a while. And then my senior year was 2020, so it was actually
Wow.
when we had the lockdown.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
that's a tough senior year.
yeah, so that made everything pretty different. I had a friend who I had known since middle school who actually applied and got accepted around that same time. So I think that was kind of cool. I was starting to become more open to it because I was more open about my faith and trying. I started kind of saying, yeah, maybe someday that I'd be open to that, going to seminary, the priesthood. And so I saw this guy doing it, and he's still seminary for a diocese now, Colin Deering. And yeah, I just to see a guy that I knew for years actually going into it, it was wild. Just
Yeah.
the reality that, oh man, I could do this if I really just applied and everything. So that definitely got the wheels churning. And then it was during the lockdown, so everybody was kind of in their houses. It was April 2020, and it was a good time for me actually because I read a whole stack of books. I was watching all kinds of Catholic TV shows and stuff like that. And yeah, just a really consoling time. So, I read a
So you
couple
actually
things.
made your 2020 productive where everybody else was like, I'm going to learn a language and they
Yeah.
don't do anything.
Yeah. No, I was more productive then than I am now at times
Yeah.
somehow. But I watched a particular show where they had a priest who, he's wearing his clerical attire, so the white collar every episode and everything. And so one night I just kind of Googled it, looked up Catholic priesthood, and then I was looking at all the details about how you kind of go about it, everything like that. And that was when I got the feeling that this was just it. I felt in my heart this peace, this profound joy, smiling ear to ear, that I just felt like God was saying very clearly, this is what you're called to do. Become a priest, go to seminary. So it doesn't happen for everyone like that, but for me, it
No.
definitely was a very clear moment. And so that's when I first started thinking about it really, really seriously. So I reached out to a couple of vocation directors. I thought about a religious order for a little while, but ended up staying with the Diocese of Charleston. So it's kind of the whole geographic area of our state of South
Yep.
Carolina. And I did my freshman year of college at Belmont Abbey. So It's a Catholic college in the Charlotte area. And I've been planning to do that my whole senior year pretty much. But I had this moment all of a sudden where I was thinking, oh, should I still go to college? Should I go to seminary? What should I do? And the stars didn't really align. It was COVID, so nobody was really communicating very much. I sent a couple emails, but the vocation director talked to you. He said, well, there's not really a lot we can do for you. There's no seminary visits, anything like that. So at this point, it was April, May. So I said, okay, well, it seems I'm supposed to do my freshman year of college. So I went there at Belleville Abbey. I absolutely loved it. I made some really great friends. And it was hard because I realized, oh, man, this isn't going to be an easy thing, just going here for a year and leaving. So I was praying about it every day. I got a spiritual director. So it's a priest that I was meeting with pretty regularly to talk about it. And yeah, by October of freshman year, we had one meeting where afterwards I said, yeah, I'm applying for seminary this year. So I applied. It's a pretty lengthy process, actually. It takes a few months to get all the paperwork and everything.
Right.
And yeah, so then in May of 2021, they accepted me, the diocese, and that's when I started.
That's awesome, because that idea of discernment, and even on the I think a definitely lighter Protestant side of it, I kind of went through I'm not even gonna say similar. Like, I did discern actually going into preaching, and the only reason really for me, it was so I went to Abilene Christian University, which is a Church of Christ college. And my grandfather is a Church of Christ preacher, or was until COVID. I think he stopped preaching at 80. He's going to be 90 next week. So 87 is when he finally stopped preaching. And so that school has a big Bible department. And so most of the people if you're a Church of Christ and you want to be a preacher in Church of Christ, that's the school you're going to. For Texas anyways. And so I remember thinking through that when I was 20, 21. But at the same time, for me, it was more of I didn't have to worry about being the celibate, right? I could still get married because it was a Protestant. But for me, it was like, man, I didn't feel strong enough in my faith at the time to feel like I could commit to being a preacher or being that example to lead people in Christ. And like, I think that's awesome. Like, is that do you think that guys have to get to that point where they feel comfortable in completely diving into their faith when they're going through that discernment to join seminary? Because for me, that would be a struggle that I would have to go through, thinking back to me at 18, 19, 20. And if I was Catholic, trying to discern that.
Yeah, I definitely think so. It's definitely in the Catholic Church, it's definitely a huge commitment. You give up a lot. For guys like me that enter in college, you give up at least part of your college experience, because seminary is not the same experience whatsoever. It's quite different. And obviously you give up marriage, you give up any kind of romantic relationships with women. So that definitely takes a commitment. But I kind of see it as once I finally said yes and I joined the seminary, it kind of showed mentally it was a time when I accepted 100% that my life is about God and nothing else. Because if it wasn't, then I would be going to some college and just partying all the time or something like that. If I didn't believe with my whole being that this was true, then I wouldn't be doing this. If God's not real, then there would be no reason to bank your whole life on the church and being a priest. So
that's awesome. And I honestly, like, it's taken me way too long to get to that point, even as a married man, right? Like, I know that even if I was Catholic, I've been called to be married. Like, I know that. But I love that idea about banking it all on that. And that's even if you're not joining the priesthood, that's exactly how we should be living our lives. And it's obviously a struggle, and we all fall all the time. God bless being able to go to confession. But I think that that's a wonderful gift that you were given,
Yeah,
to
definitely.
realize that at your age,
Hmm.
because I think a lot of, I would say even more so now, but I mean, I think that's a thing of growing up, is figuring out where your place is,
Yeah.
right? And what's your life going to be about, and to
Hmm.
have that gift so early in life, I think that that's
Definitely.
phenomenal.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I will say, guys, just because they understand they're not perfect, I would say it
Right.
definitely takes a lot. But I mean, yeah, we're all still continually
Y'all
growing,
learning to
making
be
that
priests.
commitment.
Y'all ain't priests
Mhm.
yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. There's a reason that we
And
have a
priests aren't
process. So,
perfect, but they're
yeah,
trying.
yeah, hmm
Yeah. So the process, you said it takes a long time to actually
yeah,
uh, uh, go through the whole process to be accepted. Now, generally speaking, do you throw your cards in different baskets where you're applying, like in college, right? Like you throw out a bunch of different
right.
applications, or do you
hmm
focus on one seminary school? Kind of, how do most guys go about doing that?
So how it works is that you apply for either a particular diocese. So, like I said, I'm applying for Diocese of Charleston, all South Carolina. So, if you're applying for the diocese, you're discerning being a diocesan priest. So, which
Hmm.
means you're going to be in a parish, you're going to be working there your whole life in the church. If you want to be a religious priest, then you join a religious order. So religious orders, they're spread out across different countries, different things. So for example, you got the Franciscans, Dominicans, Jesuits, all those, and they all have specific charism. So
Right.
for example, the Dominicans, their charism, it's like their task is preaching. So that's what they do all the time. The other difference is that they take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. We don't actually take formal vows of those things. So that's kind of the biggest difference. But anyway, the point is if you're discerning, you have to decide, do I want to apply for a diocese to be a diocesan priest or a religious order? So you contact them and then you apply for them. And once you get accepted, they basically sponsor you to be a seminarian for their diocese or their order. So once I got accepted by the Diocese of Charleston, they sent me to Dallas, Texas, for
Okay.
my first year. So I was studying there at the University of Dallas, Catholic
Yep.
University, at the university
That
there.
was my first diocese. So yeah, I
Yeah.
was in Athens, or yeah, not Athens, Allen, Texas.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. So it's really about you get sent kind of wherever they tell you. So you actually don't have a lot of choice into where you go. It varies a bit, especially with smaller dioceses. So after you get accepted, usually you have to go to at least two schools before you finish the whole process and get all the both of the degrees that you need. And usually, so our diocese, you have a meeting with the bishop and you kind of talk about where you want to go. So now for some bigger dioceses, like I remember Dallas, for example, they would just email the bishop and the vocations director their top three of they were given like four choices, possibilities, and they would give like their top three, and then they would get an email back that just said where they were going. And that was kind of it.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I mean one thing that goes into priesthood is your
You're a
life's not your
servant.
own anymore,
Yeah.
and you don't have the same exact freedoms per se to decide where you want to go and how you want to do it. The bishop, the priests, they decide for you.
Okay. No, that's interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't know that when you guys are signing up, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not like college where well, I guess if you were started in the diocesan, right, and then you decided later that, man, you know what, I really want to be a Franciscan. Like,
Yeah.
do guys make that switch, or does that happen too often, or is
hmm
that kind of frowned upon, where it's like, no, you need to figure that out before you start applying?
So it's really common, actually. The guys will switch between one diocese to the other, from one diocese to a religious order, or vice versa. Yeah, it's not really frowned upon. Seminary is about discernment. It's all
Hmm.
about that. The one thing that you shouldn't do is it's not like college applications in that you like apply for two religious orders in one diocese. Like if you apply for an order of diocese, it's
Yeah.
because you think you're called to be a priest and within that diocese.
Okay. No, that makes perfect sense. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that that's great that you guys can, because it's two different priestly lives, right? Like
Yeah.
between a diocese and a religious order.
Hmm.
And I think different temperaments like different things. And when you're
Yeah.
trying to discern which one you want to go, that's really cool that if you think you might want to be in a religious order, you can go and try and go over there and try it out and then go, oh no, I think I do want to be a diocesan priest and come back.
Yeah. Yeah. My seminary last year, we had 50 guys. And I would say we probably had about 5 guys who had been in a religious order or a different diocese and then had changed to the one that they're currently in.
Okay. No, that's interesting and cool that they do that,
Yeah.
because I think you're right. It is all about discernment. And
Mhm.
so what year are you on now or about to start?
I'm going to my 3rd year.
Okay.
Hmm.
And is it 7 years?
So it all
Or
kind
it
of
kind of
depends.
depends.
Yeah. So the basic number now would be 7 to 9 years.
Okay.
And so for me, I haven't finished college yet. So I'm getting my undergrad in philosophy because you always study philosophy first. So this year, I'm finishing college. And so in May, I'll have my bachelor's degree in philosophy.
Okay. Okay. So do most priests start out in philosophy? Is or
Yeah, almost pretty much everybody does, unless you've already studied it before in
okay.
school somewhere. You study, so you study philosophy for 2 to 4 years. If you have a college degree already, then the idea is you've already kind of done all your core classes and everything that would be in your first 2 years. So you do 2 years of philosophy,
Gotcha.
and if you come right out of high school, then you do 4 years in college with as a philosophy major.
Okay. And then even when you're saying college, you're going to Catholic colleges to take your philosophy classes
Mhm.
or okay.
Yeah, so it also depends on the seminary whether or not they're their own governing institution. So I spent a year in Dallas and a year in Washington D.C. In both of those seminaries, they have a university that's located right next door where we commute over to take our classes. However,
Gotcha.
there's some seminaries such as Miami where they have all their own professors, all their own staff. They award the degrees and everything like that.
Wow. Okay.
Hmm.
So it just kind of depends on how they're set up,
Yeah.
depending on what you do. Okay. Well,
Hmm.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So when you're starting off, I guess let's kind of dive into that. Like what is it like to your first year going into seminary? Like
Hmm.
what was something that you were surprised that you're like, this is
Hmm.
awesome? And what were you like, oh gosh, like I gotta get used to this? Like what were those
Hmm.
two
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I don't think anything can really prepare you for what seminary is like until you get there. I would say, I mean, probably the most beautiful thing is that you're in the seminary and every part of your daily life is focused on helping you to grow as an individual. And so the United States bishops, they have a program right now for how seminaries should run. And there's 4 different dimensions, right? So there's human formation, there's spiritual formation, pastoral formation, and I'm forgetting one maybe, but anyway, so
it's
like
all good.
yeah, the goal is to make you be the best possible person that you can be to become a priest. And so Protestant seminaries, for example, all it is mostly just taking the classes, is my
Right, the
understanding.
knowledge.
Yeah, it's the knowledge. But in Catholic seminary, I mean, we had a personal trainer at the seminary. If
Oh,
you
that's
wanted to
awesome.
start getting in shape, you have a spiritual director that you meet with every 2 weeks, who's a priest who you just talk about your spiritual life, growing in prayer, all that kind of stuff. You have a formation advisor who's another priest you meet with every 2 weeks. So you kind of alternate between those two. And he just helps you to focus on how's your formation going? What are ways you're improving? What are your goals for this year? And you get a ministry assignment. So you get assigned to a local parish, a local charity, youth group, something like that, where you can work on pastorally, how do you learn to be a priest and everything.
Right.
So they have so many abundant resources to help you grow as an individual. So that was really nice. I would say kind of the harder thing. I think seminary is hard for guys in different ways depending on where they came from.
Mm-hmm.
I came from doing a year of college where I had ultimate freedom to kind of do what I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used it in a good way. I would go to mass every day. I went to almost all my classes. But being in the seminary, all of a sudden, you have these priests who are watching over you. They're telling you to be at this meeting on this day. You can't go overnight somewhere without asking for permission. So you have to be in the seminary pretty much all the time. I mean, they would do stuff like do room checks to see if your room was clean and everything.
Yeah.
And I would sometimes I'd be so frustrated with that, because I didn't have that freedom anymore. But the reality was, well, it wasn't about me. It's never been about me. So, but at the same time, I think the difficulty of being there all the time helps helps reflection, helps your prayer life tremendously because you're just in there, you're there with the Lord, and it's just that's how you discern. You have really great ability to pray while you're in.
Well, and I think that structure, right, that you really what you're talking about, right? When you have really strong structure, it helps you, And I think I always said that, like, so my alma mater had some really strict rules. So we couldn't have girls in our dorms, we couldn't drink, we couldn't use tobacco. Not that we didn't, but but I always said that, like, that structure really helped me. Right. I was so grateful that I didn't go to like a state school or I didn't go to like a big university because it would have been awful for me. And I think as young men, when you're trying to figure things out, even whichever you're at, having that structure around you, having these rules you have to follow, having someone it really kind of helps you along the way of just developing into the person you want to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the seminary in Dallas is for college students. And so you have 18-year-olds coming right out of high school. And so that was kind of the whole idea behind it is, these are young guys and we're forming them in the system to become better men.
Yeah, that is fantastic.
Yeah.
So, what's kind of an average day for a seminarian? Like, what is it like? Like prayers at 4 a.m. Like, what are you guys doing? Right?
Yeah. Well, it's not as bad as it might seem. We don't live in a cave or anything like that. So we do have to wake up pretty early. So when I was in Dallas, we had to be in the chapel by 6:30 on weekdays, and in DC it's 7:30. So it's a little bit nicer. But you go in the chapel, you have mass every single day, which is obviously a great gift, and also we pray the liturgy of the hours together. So liturgy of the hours is the prayers of the church. It's you have books that have it, and you pray the Psalms at each hour. So the idea is through 4 weeks, you go through almost all 150 Psalms, essentially. So morning prayer will be there'll be 3 Psalms. There'll be a reading from the Old to the New Testament. There'll be intentions. And so it lasts about 10 minutes, morning prayer. So you have mass. So, daily mass is about 30 minutes. So we finish that. And, some guys get in the chapel even before those early hours to pray ahead of time. And then we go to breakfast. So all our meals are provided by the seminary. We have a catering company that they take care of all of that.
Yep.
And then you have classes throughout the day. So between about 8 o'clock to 4 p.m., just like a normal college student. So it just kind of depends on your schedule just as much as it would in college, essentially. And then when I was in Dallas, we would have a formation class every Monday. So 4 o'clock, you'd have all freshmen would be with this guy, all sophomores would be with this guy, and then you'd get some kind of class on something. So it might be talking about the sacraments, about baptism, something like that. And then, of course, you schedule your meetings throughout the week with your spiritual director and your formation advisor. So you meet with both those priests. And the idea is you kind of like alternate weeks. Maybe you meet with the spiritual director one week, formation advisor the other week. And so those meetings are just kind of about an hour long. You just kind of catch up on how things are going, everything like that. And then in the evening, about 5:15, 5:30, we always have evening prayer. So liturgy hours, same thing, 3 Psalms. You pray that. And then we go to dinner. Dinner's provided by the seminary. And then after that, you're free the rest of the day. And so it's all kind of about when can you get all your homework in, everything like that.
Right.
And at some point during the week, you have your ministry assignment. So that kind of varies in the seminary. My ministry assignment last year, I had to be there at least 4 hours a week. So I went Wednesday evening and Friday evening for 2 hours. So that also, so it depends upon the guy, where he's at,
Yeah.
what he's doing. And yeah, and then we have Saturday and Sunday. It's a lot more relaxed. So you have mass later, have mass around 8, 9 p.m. And then pretty much the rest of the day, you're free after that to do homework, spend time with other guys. The community is a big part because you live with everybody else in the same building.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's basic schedule.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, I mean, that doesn't sound, I mean, honestly, it doesn't sound terrible to me. I mean,
Yeah.
I think 18, getting up at 6:30 to go to mass and prayers might seem, could be daunting, but I mean, I'm just thinking, like, I'm usually up at, well, before COVID, I was up at 4:30 every day to go work out and then get to work by 7 and kind of, so you kind of get in that swing of things. But no, that sounds awesome, actually. I mean, I'm trying to carve out more time for myself, and it's cool that you guys have that it's already set in your schedule for that discipline.
It is, it's
and
nice.
So doing that for 7 years, I'm sure even once you become a priest and you're ordained, like, it's already ingrained in your daily routines, right? Like, you'll probably in 5 more years still be getting up. It's like, oh, it's 6:30. I'm going to get up and pray. Like, it's already in your routine, which is absolutely awesome.
Yep.
Cool. So what's is there like do most guys that start seminary finish, or is that kind of is there attrition rate?
So it kind of depends. So for college age, there's actually a very high amount of guys that leave. So I mean, understandably so. It's a very hard lifestyle, and most of us don't know what we want to do with our lives when we're 18 anyway. So
right.
Of the guys that come in right out of high school, they're 18. About 50% of them leave at some point. So it's pretty high for them. And then kind of the older you are, the more chance guys kind of know what they're doing. They kind of stay in. And then, especially once you get to theology. So the last 4 years of your studies are always theology. So once you get to that, guys tend to stick for a pretty long time. Also, guys that already got a college degree also tend to stick. To give you an example, in Dallas, we started the year 2 years ago with 48 guys. And I think in 2 years, something like 39 of them are still in formation. So we've had,
that's not that bad.
But a lot of guys, they might stay for a couple of years. They might leave. You do have some guys every once in a while that they only stay for about a semester and they leave.
Yeah, they realize quickly, like, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I'd rather that happen, right? Like, I would rather, because nobody, to have someone actually go through with it that doesn't want to be a priest is an awful idea. I mean, you think about, I'm just thinking the damage that could happen with somebody that doesn't want to be in that position, with interactions with the parish and other people. I would rather them leave than trying to stick it out.
And within the seminary, it's very much an acceptable thing when guys leave. That's kind of the way that the culture is. If anything, I think it might be harder for guys when they go back to the parish because, you had all these people thinking, they thought that you were going to become a priest. And, a lot of times people say stuff like, oh, I look forward to your ordination and everything. But so I think it's if anything, it's a little bit harder to go back there.
Yeah, no, I could see that pressure. And I'm sure that's what keeps a lot of guys in, is worrying about that pressure when they go home. They're like, hey, what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be in seminary? And they're like, I just decided it wasn't for me. And just afraid of how people would look down on them. But I think, I mean, man, we do need more priests. Like
Yeah.
we desperately need more priests. And so it's like, yeah, I want more guys to go through seminary, but at the same time, I want them to go in for the right reasons
Hmm.
and not for what they think is the right reason or that they think their family wants them to do it. And that's why they're doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've learned that the hard way in my own life. I've done stuff that I thought because I thought my family wanted me to do it. Never made me happy. It was a lot better when when I discerned something on my own and did
Yeah.
it that way. Um,
Hmm.
awesome. So you're going into your third year, going to be finishing up philosophy.
Hmm.
How excited are you to dive into theology stuff once you're done there?
Well, I haven't thought of it a ton, but I am excited. I took several theology classes my freshman year when I was at Bowen Abbey. So I took about 3 there, and I loved it. So philosophy and theology, are pretty different in some ways. Philosophy is different because it's just about learning the truth as best as you can,
Hmm.
and not necessarily bringing faith to that. So most of the philosophers you read they're not Catholic or Christian,
Right.
and so you're just trying to trying to find the truth and the answers through all that. In theology, I mean, it's blaring in your face. This is what we believe. God is real, and within that context, just kind of figuring out what we believe. How do we describe things like the Trinity, things like that. So both are really beautiful, but theology is really the fulfillment of philosophy.
Right. No, I agree. And I think
Mhm.
I it's amazing to me how the Catholic during the early part of the Catholic Church, how they started intertwining philosophy with theology. And it's
Mhm.
such a beautiful marriage, thinking about things in a logical manner, or thinking about like finding the truth. How you put it, I think, is a great way to describe that.
Mhm.
Because I just think it just helps drive things clearer, right? Like it makes things more clear when you start intertwining those together.
Mhm. Definitely.
So what I know you did three, did you do three or four? I think I only got to watch three of your
I did
things.
4 of the talks. Mhm.
So those are your favorite classes that you've taken so
Yeah.
far, right? That you did
Mhm.
on. Um, what was your favorite class you've taken so far, philosophy wise?
Mm. That is hard. Really, I've loved most of them in some way or the other. I would say, yeah. So the first talk I gave was on ancient philosophy. I would
Hmm.
say that's been my favorite.
Yeah. No,
Mhm.
I love that talk. That was the one I got to watch the whole thing. I kept wanting to go.
Nice.
So for everyone watching, he was it was on Thursday nights, which is the
Mhm.
worst night for me to be able to get out to do anything.
Yeah.
And so I would just watch it on YouTube whenever it was finally posted on there, or sometimes it was live too. I think
Yeah.
is how I watched most of your talks. But
Mhm.
um, no, I'm really excited for you, and I think it was really cool getting the that Father Smith let you do that. Or I don't know
Mhm.
if he said, "Hey, do you want to do this?" Or you, I don't. How did that come about? Let's talk about that. How did that come about? Did you bring that
Well,
up, or did he ask if you wanted to do that?
it was kind of a mutual thing. So I was talking with him and also with Michael Sandifer, who works at Prince of Peace, and they kind of thought that maybe I should do some kind of talk or talks throughout the summer. And Father Smith had said years ago when he was in seminary, he did a class or two on art in Rome or something.
Hmm.
And so he really just said, yeah, whatever you can kind of think of. And so it took me a couple of days thinking about it, but then I had the idea just that I notice so often how people don't know that much about the seminary, and they definitely don't know a lot about the classes that we take. So
Right.
I thought I had that idea. I said, why don't I just 4 of my favorite classes and just talk about them for around a half hour? And I would say it went pretty well, and it was fun for me just kind of experimenting with all the stuff and seeing how people react to it, what they liked, what they didn't like.
Right,
Mhm.
and it's a great kind of putting your feet to the fire on public speaking, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's definitely going to be a big part of your life for the rest
yeah,
of your life. So,
yeah.
and being able to be an orator, oh, yeah, that's the right word.
Gotcha.
And No, I think that's awesome that he did that, and that's funny. I didn't
Mhm.
know he did a Catholic art,
Yeah.
Rome art. One of my favorite classes I took in college was what was it? It was called Christianity and the or art and the aesthetics of Christianity, and it was
Mhm.
this course that went throughout history, starting with Israel and how it influenced art all the way throughout history. And then we
Hmm.
had to write a paper on that at the end of it. We had to pick, I think we had to do music art. So we had to pick like a high art and a low art. So it was like I think I compared, I can't remember who it was. It was like a composer versus like some rock band. And comparing
Yeah.
how their music was more complex versus not. And then,
Hmm.
I don't know. I love that class. It was fun.
Yeah.
But and just how Christianity really is infused throughout our society,
Yeah.
and the Catholic Church is the foundation of that. Now, I didn't know that when I was 19,
Yeah.
but now at 42, I'm like, oh yeah, no, everything we have that's good in this world is because of number one, God, and number two, the Catholic Church.
Hmm.
And yeah, so awesome. So I know we've been talking here for about 40 minutes or so, but
Hmm.
any recommendations for guys that are discerning whether they want to go into the priesthood?
Hmm.
Any any words of wisdom?
Sure.
Since you're a 3-year veteran of the seminary at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a lot I could say, but the biggest thing is really just being open. I think some guys have that thought and they just kind of push away because they're afraid, but you really shouldn't be afraid. And so really just praying and listening to what God will tell you. There's a good book out there that's a pretty decent guide. It's kind of around everywhere in the servant world. It's called To Save a Thousand Souls by Father Brannon. And so that's a book that a lot of guys will just kind of breeze through when they're thinking about it. And they'll give you a lot of the practical details. So it'll say, this is how seminary works. This is how you should go about it. And so that helps a lot. And then other than that, I'd say, so one of the biggest things that you can do is to meet with a spiritual director. So just contact a priest and say, I'm interested in talk about this. Why don't we meet sometime? And you can meet with them as much as you want, whether it's once or a bunch of times.
Hmm.
I was talking with a priest about this when I was discerning, and he said, you can really ask any priest, and they'll probably drop everything and want to meet with you because we love being priests. And I'll never forget that. So I think, yeah, just anybody that you feel like you connect with, just reach out to them. And yeah, the biggest thing is if you feel God call, then go for it. I was kind of worried about whether or not I should try to finish college first or when I should go. But
Yeah.
I would keep reading that gospel where Jesus, he calls the apostles. So he goes up to Peter and Andrew and he just says, follow me. And they go. They leave
Yeah.
everything. They don't say, wait, Lord, I need a college degree or anything like that. And so that really stuck out to me. It's just when you know God's calling you, then you can just go, you know?
Yeah. No, that's a great
Mhm.
way to great
Yeah.
way to put it. And yeah, you think about that. I mean, man, just they left their stuff and walked away
Yeah.
and just followed him. And
Right.
then in contrast, the rich young ruler, right? Sell all your stuff and
Yeah.
follow me. And it's not that he was a bad dude, but
Yeah.
because I think it
Absolutely.
even says that he followed the law and he's never really been this bad person, but
Yeah.
he was too attached to his worldly things to follow Christ.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hmm.
So when what have you I guess I was kind of reading my wife I was telling you before we started, she wrote a bunch of questions down, and so I'm kind of uh looking at those finally. Um
Sure.
what what kind of what have you seen that at different parishes that you're like, man, when I'm a priest, I want to do that?
Mm. Well, I think one of the biggest things is just really getting to know the people as best you can. Because I think when you have a priest who you only see on Sunday and you only see in the pulpit and you never talk to them and they don't know your name, they don't know who you are, that doesn't breed a very good situation, and most people
Right.
are unhappy in that situation. I think the role of the priest is that he is the shepherd of the flock. So he should get to. So the biggest thing is just getting to know the people, knowing their names, knowing their stories, and I think that keeps us honest, because sometimes our lives are very different. We forget what it's like to just be a normal person. So yeah, I think the biggest thing is just being the people. I saw a lot of that with Father Smith and Father Thomas in the summer. I
They're
can really
great.
say. I mean, we had people over to the rectory for dinner. We would go out and have dinner with people, do a house blessing, do something like that. And so it was, that was something that I saw, and I said, I needed to emulate that.
No, I love that advice, because I think I've heard of those horror stories in different parts of the country where some priests are not involved with the lives of their parish, and to think of that as like, I am the shepherd. This is my flock. I need to know them. I need to lead them and guide them as best I can. I think that's an awesome thing to have in your head, moving forward through seminary and going into the priesthood.
Mm-hmm.
So awesome. Well, Jake, I think I again, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it, and look forward to seeing what's going to happen to you in the future. Hopefully, you're going to get through it all. It sounds like you're on board.
I feel pretty good right now. Yeah.
Either way, God's going to use you to do great things.
Yeah, definitely.
I think God's always got a plan for us, whether it's the priesthood or whether it's sacrament of marriage. I think God can do great things through us all. So
definitely,
I'm really grateful to have this time to talk with you. And so thanks for everything. And I'm going to put that book, Save 1,000 Souls, in the description below.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to get that, they can.
For sure.
So I appreciate that. So everyone, thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and appreciate all the support I get on the channel, and let's just keep trying to spread the Catholic faith. So thank y'all.